As it is every 4 years, politics is in the air. So it's impossible to escape those political conversations with the presidential race going on. Now, inevitably, when I have these conversations, I end up having to tell the person that I'm speaking with that, hey, I don't vote as a matter of principle because I'm an anarchist. And so many times, the person that I'm talking to, usually a friend or an acquaintance, says to me, but Vin, you're such a smart guy, you're so educated. How could you possibly be an anarchist? And sometimes I tell them, well, see, I'm an anarchist because rape is wrong. Okay, I know, that's pretty provocative, but it's the beginning of a thought experiment. And I want to walk through that thought experiment with you in this video. It's short, and by the end, you may very well be on your way to being an anarchist yourself, but at the very least, you'll understand the basis of the concept and add an additional layer of consciousness to your understanding of politics and government and really the whole entire world around you. So let's get started. Here's the scenario. You're standing in a room. In front of you is someone who wants to rape you. It doesn't matter in this scenario if you are a man or a woman. It also doesn't matter what constitutes rape to you. Whatever it is that in your mind, when I say this person wants to rape you, that's what they want to do. That is their desire. Now, the one thing that we will be using to define rape in this case is, it's not the act per se, but it is the lack of consent. The fact that you are not agreeing to allow this person to perform whatever act it is that they have a desire to perform on you. Okay. Rape is one of those human acts that in civilized societies is universally considered abhorrent. I don't want to use the term immoral. I don't want to use the term unethical. I think evil's a good one. But certainly, let's use the term bad. Bad. And here's the thing. By default, it's bad because you're not consenting to it, which means it has to be less preferable than it not happening, which would be good. Not being raped is good. Being raped is bad. So it's by default. Because once you consent to an act happening, it's no longer rape. So in this case, what we're talking about is someone wants to do something to you. They want to rape you against your will, against your consent. So here's a thought experiment. This person is standing there. They want to rape you. It is bad. If I put them in a uniform, any uniform, is there any uniform or costume or clothing style that I could change and put them in that would take it from bad to good? Is there any piece of jewelry or any implement that I could give them? Could I give them anything signed on paper by any person that would make it no longer bad, no longer immoral? How about this? How about if there were 10 people instead of just the one, and they all raped you instead of just the one person? Does that eliminate the immorality? I would tend to think it actually would increase it tenfold, if not more, right? How about this scenario? Still the 10 people in the room, but only one is going to do the raping, but they and you get to vote on who's going to rape you. Does that make it good? How about if they told you that they had been told by God, by a higher power, that they should rape you? Does that make it good, moral? How about if your grandfather, if they had a signed piece of paper from your grandfather stating that they could rape you, their grandchild, something signed years and years ago, or maybe your great-grandfather or your great-great-grandfather, would that then make it moral? Now, obviously, the answer is no. Even for immoral people, they don't want to be raped. Even a rapist doesn't want to be raped. And that's really what a psychopath or a sociopath is. It's someone who has no empathy. But for normal people who are not psychopaths, who are not sociopaths, we're very much able to say, well, I don't want to be raped, so I'm not going to rape others. You see, that's how normal human beings behave. We have a sense of empathy. We're all not out there not raping people and punching people in the face and being overly rude and murdering others. It's not because of laws. Because the people who are doing those things, there are laws, and those people do them anyway. I don't know about you, but I mean, if you took the laws away for murder, I'm not going out and murdering people. That's not who I am. That's not what's keeping me at bay. So, why is it? What is it fundamentally about rape and about the lack of consent as a principle that we have an issue with? What is it getting at about our understanding of ourselves and our relationship with other people? Well, primarily, the reason why I have the right to either consent or not consent to a sexual act with another individual is because I own my body. And you own your body. That was the argument of abolitionists in terms of ending slavery. If you have this human being and this human being, and all human beings own their own bodies, it is up to them voluntarily to decide what they do with their labor, since their labor is the result of the movement of something that they own, the utilization of tools, their hands. These are all things that I own. And if I do something negative, I'm responsible for those actions, and I'm held responsible in the same way that I'm held responsible if my dog goes and chews up my neighbor's garden, because I own my dog. Now, children are a little bit of a gray area, and I think that that's a place where we can still grow as a society. I think we have basically two sets of people on the planet. Those who believe they own their children, they own their bodies, the same like slaves, and I brought you into this world, I could take you out, right? Classic. And then there are others who believe that we are caretakers of our children, that we are caretakers, that during the time that they can't necessarily care for themselves in this world, because we made a choice to bring them into this world, we're at least responsible for getting them on their feet and getting them started. And I think that that's a beautiful way to look at your relationship with your child. And I wish more people did. But I digress. So, one of the things about not giving consent in this rape scenario is that the whole thing about not giving consent is that that's going to necessarily mean that if someone wants to get within touching distance of me and do some sexual things to me, that beyond just words of no, there's going to be resistance. Whether it's fighting, whether it's running, whether it's struggling, whatever it is, there's going to be some resistance, because that's an aspect of not giving consent. That's a human response. So, of course, and this is why they say rape is not really a crime of sex. Rape is a crime of violence or a crime of control. Because in order to get the person to hold still enough for you to rape them, you have to do one of two things. Either one, incapacitate them, either with violence or subterfuge, which would be a form of violence, right? Some sort of poisoning, or beat them up to the point where they can't resist anymore. Or the threat of such violence, a gun to the head, a knife to the throat. So there's the violence involved in extracting from this person, in taking from this person without their consent. And that's the only way that it can occur. That's the only way. You know, there's also perhaps the ethical way, right? Where you threaten a sort of psychological violence, a blackmail or something like that. Right? But even in that case, there is a bit of at least a choice. That the person says, all right, go ahead, blackmail me. Fuck it, but, I'm not acquiescing to this. And then the person goes off and blackmails them. Puts out whatever information. At least there's still a little bit of a choice in there. I mean, that's the gray area on this one. But not necessarily needed for this scenario. I think we've got enough in that. So what have we arrived at in terms of a principle? In terms of a principle, it's this. When we are talking about that which we own, the primary thing being our body, unless consent is given, no one has the right to claim ownership of that which is owned by another person. Because fundamentally, if we own our own bodies, then rape is theft. Because the sexual act is us giving pleasure to another person when it's consensual. It's a mutual giving of pleasure, a mutual giving of value. But if only one person is taking, and they're taking with violence, something that belongs to us, then that is theft. So, as we walk it back, taking the property of another person without their consent is immoral, is bad, is unethical. And it cannot be made moral by the wearing of a uniform, the giving of or the taking and owning of a title, that person has a title, by a group of people voting that your property should be taken, by a whole group of people taking that property and dividing it up amongst themselves, as in the gang rape scenario. But that's exactly what government is. And that's something that most people haven't stopped and thought about. Yes, we've come all of this way, hundreds or thousands of years of these systems, And at one time, I'm in Nevada, in Las Vegas. I'm sure at one time, the sheriff of Las Vegas, who is now in charge of Las Vegas Metro Police Department, the police department for all of the Las Vegas Valley and most of Clark County. There was a time when it was just one guy who was some civilian until somebody handed him a tin star and said, here you go, you're the sheriff now. At what point did he gain morality? At what point was his action to accost another person? At what point was his action to pull a gun on another person? Or take resources from another person? Or tell some person that they had broken a law that was a non-violent law? Not retribution, not I'm stopping you from murdering, I'm stopping you from raping. You stole something, you initiated force against another person, and now I'm stopping you from doing that, and we're going to try to make reciprocity. At what point did he get the right to initiate force to take what he wanted? And see, that's why I don't vote. Because voting is violence. And if I'm not consenting to having money taken from me, then on a philosophical level, taxation is theft. It really doesn't matter what it goes to. You know, if there are, you put it like this, you know, people will say, well, everybody should pay their fair share. Everybody should pay their fair share. Well, then let's say this. There are 12 horny people in this, you know, prison. 5 horny guys in a cell. You know, somebody's got to pay their fares. Everybody's got to pay their fair share, right? So let's take a vote. Let's vote on who's gonna be the victim today. Right? What is the quote? Democracy is 2 wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. The only principle you need to understand is that rape is wrong, and it's always wrong. Theft is wrong, and it's always wrong. Initiating violence against another person is wrong, and it's always wrong. It's always wrong. It doesn't matter if there's some made-up title. It doesn't matter if there's words on a piece of paper saying, hey, it's okay for me to steal from you. It doesn't matter if you're wearing a costume. A costume. Could be a blue costume, could be a brown costume. It's a fucking costume, though. A black robe, that's a fucking costume. I know that's difficult. It's difficult to take that sort of a principled stand. But how do you not take such a stand? I'm unwilling to take any other stand because I'm unwilling, simply unwilling, to think of a scenario where rape is moral.